Welcome to the Consortium More Than Marketing podcast. This one's been a little while in the making actually, because Camille is, I'm trying to think of what the right term is, an inspiration to me, and I've been keen for a long time to get Camille on the podcast. I think her business is a reason that I'm still going in many ways, because it repairs me when I break myself. So we'll get onto that a little bit more in a minute. But Camille is the founder and managing director of the Float Spa, also very recently award-winning Brighton and Hove award winner, and as well as many other awards over the years, I'm sure, Camille. But would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Yes, thank you for the invite. I'm always feels very grateful. Thank you for allowing me to be here. So yes, I am Camille. I am founder of Float Spa. Float Spa is a health and wellbeing centre based in Hove. We have been going since 2015, and we've got all things aimed at improving your mental, social and physical wellbeing, all in a lovely little space in Hove.
It's perfect. And I mean, the amount of people I tell about the Float Spa, the frustration for me is because a lot of my clients are national, getting them to come to Hove is sometimes tricky. So I'm working on that. Maybe we'll set up a retreat in Hove or something and they can all come and experience it. But you can't underestimate the value of this stuff on your well-being, can you? Do you want to talk a little bit more about what the Float Spa actually does?
Sure. So we call ourselves a health and wellbeing centre. I think when I founded Float Spa, I didn't even know what that meant. So it was quite an odd thing. So we have several different treatments, all aimed at improving mental, physical and social wellbeing. So that's our core pillars. Our signature treatment is flotation therapy. So I fell in love with flotation therapy in 2014 and thought I could do it better than everyone else. So decided to bring flotation to Brighton, because at that time flotation therapy wasn't in Brighton and Hove, and I was trekking across the country to get my floats in. And we also have other services such as infrared saunas, we have massage, and then a massive plethora of self-employed therapists that work for us doing things like coaching, acupuncture, physiotherapy, osteopaths, that kind of things. And then we have about 35 classes on our timetable, and that varies from yoga, different types of yoga, Pilates, now Pilates with weights is a new big thing going on, sound baths, gong baths, meditation, etc. So various forms of quite active classes to quite restorative and relaxation classes.
Brilliant. And what sort of took you on that journey to realise how important floats were? Where were you at to be needing floats?
I was the stereotypical corporate, overworked, completely burnt out, highly stressed individual. And so I used to work in sales and marketing, believe it or not. The last job I worked at was in the charity sector. I was having a conversation with someone else about that sector today, actually. But yeah, it was a very hard sector to work in, and it was very much expected that you got to work at 8 o'clock, and if you left before 6 or 7 you were skiving. It was really high pressure, high stress. I mean, I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, my boss actually said, I want to stress you out so much that you give birth on the boardroom floor. And that face. And in 2013, I thought that was just normal. How crazy to think about that now. But anyway, I went back to work too soon after my baby was born. It was just, I was that stereotypical, I wanted to work. I had a succession. I tended to work in companies for long times. I was super loyal to companies. I worked in the city, absolutely loved working in sales and marketing in the city. I was that person. And it was in 2014 when my daughter got very, very ill. And I then spiraled into depression, anxiety, and was actually diagnosed with PTSD. And when you operate in stress to that level, and then suddenly you can't function, and I had to spend 4 weeks out of work unexpectedly. I left at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday. I said, I'll see you tomorrow, and went back in 4 weeks later because my daughter was so ill. It was really surreal after taking time out, and my life had changed radically because my daughter, I'd almost watched my daughter die, etc. She's absolutely fine now, but I had changed, but I remember walking back in to work, when I could go back in, and I was in like a 3-hour intensive meeting where something had failed and it was my fault. And I was like, I haven't even been here. How can it be my fault? And anyway, that was the catalyst of my massive mental down spiral. And I'd never failed at anything before. Does that make sense? It's not like I'm so far up my own ass that I'm so good at everything, but I'd never failed at a job, and because my life had changed so radically, I did spiral massively out of control. I was so burnt out. I was burnt out before I even went into hospital, never mind coming back, and then the additional stress of that personal stress on top of the stress in the environment of work. And then I got a PTSD diagnosis, and I went through the conventional route. I didn't want to take antidepressants. It wasn't a pathway I wanted to go onto. So my dad suggested flotation therapy, and I gave the stereotypical answer that most people make. I don't have 5 minutes to myself, never mind an hour. Well, I didn't, because I was highly stressed, overworked, completely burnt out, did not want to take my own care into my own hands, and I did listen to him, and I went. And I'd love to say I was fixed on the first session, but that was so far from the truth. I was not used to being on my own. I wasn't used to being alone with my own thoughts. The PTSD unleashed a lot of childhood things that I'd buried and suppressed, because I'm excellent at suppressing emotions and feelings, and decompartmentalizing from reality of what happened. And I really did not like my first float. I couldn't relax. I pinpointed everything that was wrong with the float tank. I didn't like the room, didn't like the people, which is normal when you are in a state of high stress and burnout. I found everything that was wrong with it and then left and said to my dad, that was pointless, what are you talking about? Obviously, knowing what I know now, it's hilarious. I went somewhere different for the second float, and actually there was so much information in the waiting room. And during that second float, there was a shift of something. Still didn't really like it. Then I went home that night and slept for the first time, and that was the real game changer, like sleep. If you've ever been in that state of overload, complete burnout, manic episode, sleep is not something that was your friend. And that morning afterwards, I was like, oh my God, I just felt like a normal person for a few minutes. Then I went back to that same place, and then I rang up my dad and said, should we open a float centre, because it would be really good. So obviously, knowing his manic daughter who worked in marketing and sales, he was like, yeah, let's do it. I wish it was as easy as that. I'm obviously, there was lots of conversations. It wasn't as easy as, yeah, here's some money and just go for it. But you get my drift. And then, it was through floating I realised that work was the problem and that work needed to change. It's no good being in that state of stress. I was in fight and flight all the time. Obviously running a business is less stressful than working for someone else. Maybe not, but flotation was my saviour, and I wanted to show people at Brighton and Hove what flotation therapy is around. I mean, it's been around since the 50s, huge in the 80s, but it was all about me showcasing the right way to do things, and that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I love that. I love that your dad suggested it as well. Because he must be from a generation where that's not the done thing.
Well, he works in investment, and what he found out is a lot of his clients, and it sounds awful, but weren't leading a very healthy lifestyle, which he didn't lead a very healthy lifestyle. And if you want people to invest their money with you for the long term and then not die, it sounds awful. He decided about 15 years ago to start really taking care of his health. Nothing actually happened to him. He wasn't ill, although his best friend was diagnosed with cancer, who was one of the most stressed out people he'd ever met. And I think he just took that as the catalyst. And we see this at Floatsbar all the time. You either have yourself, a close person, a relative, a child, something forces you to make that change, because we all believe we're invincible until we're not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, luckily, unluckily, it's so in the media now that I think even if you haven't got a close person that's been impacted by their health, it's talked about more widely. I mean, why more people still don't take it seriously, I don't understand. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on this podcast. We've also had Gavin Walsh on in the past as well. So I know you know Gavin, and I just think it's a no-brainer. I was talking to my COO the other day because he went to a conference, an Ibiza conference, which is normally quite alcohol and various other things, bits and pieces. And he was telling me that he stayed sober the whole time. And as you know, I don't drink at all anymore. But he was like, he said, I feel great. And I said, it's addictive. He said, that's really interesting. I've never thought about the fact that feeling great after doing something so full on could be addictive. I'm like, no, it is. Just like some people find the alcohol itself addictive, the feeling of not having a hangover and still having had a good time, it's almost like a smug, a little bit smug, but that feeling is addictive. Like, I can remember everything that happened yesterday and I've still got energy.
I mean, I agree. People don't realise how bad they feel until they start feeling good. And when you feel good, it's like even if I do lots of endurance races, and what I do the night before the race, does that make sense? So if I race on a Sunday, on Friday night I restrict my sleep, so I'm really tired, so I go to bed earlier the next day. Does that make sense? And then I have a much better rate. It's such a weird
That's
thing.
really
I get
interesting.
that. So I exhaust myself out the day before, so I have more of a very
sleep.
low. Yes, so that means I go to bed much earlier the night before a race, because most people can't sleep the night before a race.
You're so right. I was literally thinking, because what I will do the week before a race, I'll really prioritise my sleep. So if I was racing on a Sunday, I would go into Saturday feeling amazing. Then I would be stressed because I'd be racing the next day, so I wouldn't sleep. So actually, that's a really clever idea.
So so what happens though is that Saturday I feel like I'm hungover. So I'll get up at like 4:30 or something just to really disrupt my body, and then the Saturday night I'll go to bed about 8 o'clock, and then I get up for race day and I'm so ready for the race because I'm not thinking about it. I'm so prepped and prepared and done everything that I exhaust myself. But my point being is, you don't realise that lack of sleep until you don't sleep, or you don't know what it feels like to be hungover until you get a hangover. It's like, I have a gluten allergy, and I was thinking about it. I was talking to someone the other day, and they met me just as I was figuring it all out. And it was literally about 2 weeks after stopping eating any gluten. I was like, oh my God, my body doesn't feel sluggish and really drained and fatigued and feel sick and all this stuff, or ill all the time. And it was only when you stop feeling bad and you start to feel good, you go, actually, I don't want to go back to feeling bad.
100%. I can't even imagine what it must feel like for some people in their bodies that don't look after them. Or I would love to be able to do like a body swap, as long as I could come back to mine, just to feel what it feels like, because it must be really hard. But anyway, we get sidetracked.
Right.
I wanted very briefly, obviously you've talked about the floats, and that's how the business started. As you probably recall, I really enjoy the infrared sauna, so I do the float, but a little bit like your first experiences, I struggle with it because I struggle with having nothing to do for an hour, to be honest. So they work for me when I manage to fall asleep, but if I'm awake, then I'm like, oh, there's too much to think about, too much to do. But I love the infrared saunas. Do you want to talk for a second about the benefit of those as well?
Of course. So when we opened, a lot of our clients started to say, oh, infrared sauna would really complement flotation therapy. I'd never had an infrared sauna, and so typical me, I went down a huge 6-month rabbit hole of trying to find a really good sauna, because a lot of times, especially with sauna, you're emitting infrared waves, which can be classed as radiation. So a lot of saunas on the market emit carbon, and actually that's not necessarily the good stuff that you have. It's like having an iPhone stuck to your face intensely. So I really started to look into kind of what the benefits were, because yes, I'd physically seen the benefits of flotation therapy. So in order to fully understand saunas, I had to kind of go and intensely figure it out. So an infrared sauna, it looks similar, but ours are designed for one person, which is quite nice. So you don't have someone opening and shutting the door and letting all the heat out, or someone sweating next to you trying to have a conversation, or even more, 2 people having a conversation and you're not in it and they're irritating you. You can listen to a music, podcast, read a book. So it feels like getting into warm, very dry air. So it's not burning and sticky, and so you can't, it's not comfortable. It's super comfortable. If you have a shower before, you open all your pores. So, pretty much 10-15 minutes into a sauna session, your body just starts to profusely sweat. And what it does is helps your body's, it acts what they call like a third kidney, and helps to filter toxins out of your body. So toxins are everywhere, in the air that you breathe, in the food that you eat, in the clothing that you wear, everything you consume. There's toxins everywhere, and it is virtually impossible to live a load or a no toxin life. So heat therapy is now recommended on the NHS to support those people going through cancer treatment, to help make cells more receptive to chemotherapy or radiotherapy, because it helps the cells eliminate waste. So if you imagine a cell, I always do a little dance because I'm a weirdo, and once the cell is used up, so when you use an energy cell when you're training, for example, or you use a hormone cell when your hormone cell has been used up, not all the time does that cell then eliminate out of your body. It bashes and disrupts and smacks healthy cells and happy cells and disrupts them and neutralizes them. So what you want to do is, using something like an infrared sauna, helps your body to flush out the toxins via your urine, via the toilet, and helps to sweat out some from the surface of your skin. And then you just want to make sure you have a thorough shower afterwards, just to wash off any waste that's on the surface of your skin. So it's excellent to help your body detox. So if you feel that you're getting cold and flus in the winter, it enhances your immune system because it gets rid of the waste off your cells. I love it during the summer months when you are hot. I'm always cold, so I love being hot on hot in the summer months, and it just helps your body be really optimized and healthy than it would be without using them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I fully endorse them, and I do have one at home now as well because I love them so much. Obviously, those people that know you, that are listening to the podcast, know you've had an interesting journey over the last year. I think it's useful to touch on it, not to dwell on it because you're not that type of person anyway, but do you want to share with the audience what journey you've gone through over the last year, and I guess maybe like the one key thing you've learned from it?
Don't do it.
I'm not sure you have a choice, but yeah.
I know. So yes, for those that don't know, so we had been in our home on 3rd Avenue since 2014, because we signed our lease obviously before we opened, because we did lots of renovations, and it was coming up to our lease renewal, and for us, the existing landlord wasn't going to be a continual relationship we wanted to have anymore. It's a very diplomatic way of saying things. They weren't maintaining the building, which was part of their deal. So the building was crumbling around us. And we weren't about to sign up to a new 5-year lease with them, because for us, it deteriorated so badly since COVID. The next 5 years, it would be 10, 50 times worse. So we started to make a really harsh decision of what we're going to do. We either close, easy option, should have taken that one, or move. And I decided to drive the wrong way to work and stumbled across the old HSBC on Church Road. And there was a to let sign, and it had classification for everything, meaning that we could potentially move Float Spa there. And when I was looking for property in 2014, finding commercial use like that was like a needle in a haystack. Finding ground floor access for float tanks was like a needle in a haystack. Finding disabled entrance was just non-existent. And so this building was like, oh my God, we should definitely try and get it. Anyway, after much discussions and negotiations and fending off Pret-a-Manger from Church Road, we managed to secure the building, and then we set forth a 6-month renovation journey, or it should have only been 3 months, but took longer anyway. And so we were midway through the renovations, etc., and then I decided to go and get diagnosed with cancer. Which was not exactly the best timing. I also managed to sell my house, because I thought moving house and then or renovating and relocating first, and then 6 weeks later moving house was ambitious. I thought that the cancer would be an addition that, would be really good timing. So unfortunately, yes, in business, I now have an exit strategy, but in business, they say it takes about 2 years to develop a proper exit strategy for someone, as I operated within my business, not 8 days. And the diagnosis came after we'd already started chopping holes in walls and moving float tanks. So we were already committed, and I never, ever foreseen it ever happening. I mean, when I was going in for tests, they were like, only 5% of people your age get this type of cancer. I was like, really good stats, that, thanks so much. But yeah, I decided to be one of the 5%, aren't I special? And the whole experience last year was not one I ever want to repeat, because we opened on the 16th. The opening was delayed by a few weeks because of builder challenges, and then I had to go in for life-saving surgery, and I genuinely thought 2 weeks I'll be back. Not 6 months. It was such a hard road back, possibly because I'd pushed it to try and get open and put all my eggs in the basket, and we pushed so hard, and I didn't ever foresee what would happen when we opened. I mean, we went from in a basement where no one really walked past to the doors wide open and everybody coming in. My team were completely thrown in at the deep end. They're a very established team and they were amazing, but the building wasn't finished even on the morning that we were opening. We opened, then we closed, but we didn't tell anyone that we had to close because the builders hadn't finished. The whole thing was the worst, most challenging experience I've ever been through, and one certainly I would never, ever repeat, for sure.
What would you say the one piece of learning out of that? Was it the exit strategy? Have an exit strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I had, a manager in place, but everything was, you have to look at yourself. So I did look at myself, and I am an inspirational manager. So I like to motivate and inspire. I don't like to micromanage. And I mean, we had no clue. I mean, we had no idea what was going to happen when we opened these doors. So I mean, I'm not going to say to my consultant, oh yeah, I can't have my surgery because I have to stay at work. It's just, there was no logic anywhere. We had no choice. So I mean, now we have a whole range of middle management. Everybody knows what they're doing, but we would never have figured all that out in only 8 days. It wouldn't have been possible. It just wasn't possible. It just, replicating that kind of experience just doesn't really happen. So you're not going to not have surgery. You're not going to not open. There was no win-win. There was no win solution out of anything. The learning was we are all amazingly resilient, and we all did the best out of the situation that we were in.
Yeah. So before we came on the podcast, before we started recording, I said to you, can you have a think about 3 sort of top tips or 3 things that people could or should do to look after their well-being, I suppose, if we put a broad term on it. What would you say those are?
Taking breaks is my biggest one for everybody, because people don't take a break. And if you are a business owner, a lot of time people that own businesses that have a team, they want to be showing that they're the busiest person in the world. And I actually believe that in order to get the best out of your team is to take breaks and actively take a break and tell people that you are taking a break. And taking a break culture is completely acceptable, because no one can operate 100% all the time because their battery would die.
And when you say take breaks, do you mean like coffee breaks, lunch breaks, or do you mean holidays, or both?
It could be anything. Yeah. I actually, taking a holiday is a luxury, and a lot of people maybe can't do that. But in your day, you might get to wherever you're working between 9 and 5, hypothetically. Most business owners work longer than that, but between that 9 and 5, it's like, can you every day take regular active breaks during your day? And that is just getting up from your desk and going for a walk. I mean, I would like to incorporate and say point 2 is put activity during your break. So it's not just getting up, going and sitting on a different chair and scrolling your phone. It's actively going for a little walk, or actively going and breathing some fresh air, or doing something that completely switches your brain off for a moment. So those are my two things: taking a break, but actively putting something positive into that point.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something. I mean, I do the holidays one, as you know, but I probably don't do the active breaks one enough. Is there a third thing?
There is.
Yeah.
Celebrate when you have even done the little things. I love celebration. It's my biggest, in terms of all my coaching, I teach people how to celebrate themselves more. You know, I've been accused of being up my own arse quite a few times. I was like, well, if I'm not going to celebrate my victories or the things that I've done, then how are you ever going to change? And if you are feeling like you're overwhelmed or burnt out, most of the time all you're doing is comparing to all the things that you've not done. And so your to-do list might be mounting and you're not getting things through, and you then talk to yourself really negatively. But actually, if your objective is just to get out of bed, celebrate getting out of bed, because on some days when you feel rubbish, getting out of bed is a really tough thing. And if you start to celebrate that you've just done that, you start to feel more confident and happier, and then positive things change. You know, if you've got a massive win in work, celebrate that. Get your team that, you know, you might watch your sporting heroes achieve something and you feel the adrenaline rush, which is super positive. It floods your body with positive hormones. Enjoy that.
Yeah, celebrate. It's probably a definitely underutilized one, isn't it? Because we hear negative more loudly than we hear positive, so really reinforcing that. And then the final thing, Camille, was business. Well, I said book or podcast, and I think you said you've gone wacky, so
it's not business, if that's okay.
That's okay.
I love this book. It is a little bit wacky. It's called The Secret of Your Body. Now, if you are quite spiritual, so, you know, you can go through this book and you go, right, I've got a problem with my shoulder, my right shoulder, and you go to it and then you read all about the description of what's wrong with your right shoulder and you go, oh my God, that is who I am as a person. Yep, that's right. And then it gives you tips on how to improve it. Or it could do things about your knees or your lungs or your...
Is that book in reception? Like if I come... Was it in your...
It's my book. But
I feel like it should be in reception.
I know, but I have got so many books that have been borrowed and then not returned. So, you know, I love physical books and I read a lot of books, but I listen to a lot of books on Audible as well. For you and your training, I recommend you listen to Raw by Stacey Sims. Game changing. If you've not read it, it's really good for female nutrition, actual female nutrition and training, because a lot of the books are always tested on men. So I'm not a man hater. I just think that there's a time and place for women. And one of the opening line is something I use all the time, which is, women are not small men.
This is so true. That's a whole nother podcast we could probably go on to talk about.
But it's an excellent book for training. Oh my God, now I feel like I should have done something for business.
That's okay.
We
have loads of business. Yeah, we have loads of business recommendations. I think, you know, as I said to you at the start, before we came on air, I wanted this podcast to be focused on overcoming adversity, but also about well-being, because it's a massive passion of mine, and I don't think enough people take it seriously. Because, like you say, unfortunately, there tends to be the health scare or there's something happen, and that's when we do it. But actually, if we could embrace this earlier on, don't need that stuff to happen. So, Camille, thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be a record length one because we've gone well over our 20 minutes, but it doesn't matter. Hopefully people will find it interesting and want to stay tuned in. So to my audience, if there is anything else you would like us to cover in the podcast, I think we're now on episode 4 of season 2. We'd love to hear from your suggestions, or if you're listening and thinking you've got a great story that you'd like to share, please get in touch with me. Thank you for listening.